Ship 36 exploded. Billions in damage. Test site destroyed. Normal companies would delay for months. But SpaceX? They're doing something nobody expected. Flight 10 is getting massive changes. They might launch Ship 37 without any safety testing. No static fire, nothing. This decision could save their timeline or create the biggest disaster in SpaceX history. Why would they risk everything on an untested rocket? The answer will shock you. Let's dive right in. Here's what really happened. Workers are pulling twisted metal chunks weighing tons from what was once SpaceX's crown jewel test site. The massive facility, completely destroyed. But this wasn't just any explosion. Ship 36 was sitting still, not flying, not moving, just there. Then it detonated like a bomb, on the ground, during a routine test. How does a rocket explode while it's basically parked? That question is keeping SpaceX engineers awake at night, because the answer could end the entire Starship program. But something incredible happened next. Instead of delays, instead of shutting down, SpaceX made a decision so radical it's dividing the entire space industry. They're considering launching Ship 37 without any safety testing. No static fire, no dress rehearsal, nothing. Ship 37 sits ready in Mega Bay 2 right now. It passed its pressure tests. It survived the crushing forces that would destroy most vehicles. But skipping the final safety check? That's never been done on this scale. Would you board a plane that skipped its final inspection? That's exactly what SpaceX might do with a 50-story rocket packed with more explosive power than some nuclear weapons. The risk is astronomical. But the reason behind this gamble will shock you. Here's what SpaceX doesn't want you to know. Flight 6 with Ship 31 was nearly perfect. It reached over 21,000 kilometers per hour, rock solid, stable throughout the entire flight. It looked like SpaceX had finally cracked the code. Then came Flight 9 with Ship 35, same altitude, same time frame. But Ship 35 was 5,000 kilometers per hour slower. Ice started forming around the payload section just 16 minutes in. That's not weather. That's a massive fuel leak. The devastating truth. Starship Block 1 was actually better than Block 2. SpaceX went backwards. They downgraded their own design, and now they're paying the price with explosion after explosion. But why would they do this? The answer reveals something darker about what's happening inside SpaceX. Elon Musk quietly admitted something that should terrify every investor. Starship can only carry less than 50% of its promised payload. Let that sink in. They sold the world on a rocket that fundamentally cannot deliver what they promised. The Raptor engines were designed for massive thrust, but they can't handle it. Flight 7 literally vibrated itself to death. Flight 8 had engines overheating and failing mid-flight, so SpaceX started desperately cutting weight everywhere, making the rocket lighter, more fragile, pushing engines beyond their breaking point. It's like removing the brakes from a race car to make it faster. Sure, it might work, until you need to stop. But the Ship 36 explosion reveals something even more disturbing. Industry insiders are whispering about a cover-up SpaceX doesn't want public. During what they call the tent era, workers were allegedly mishandling COPV tanks. These are composite pressure vessels storing helium at crushing pressures. Million-dollar components that keep the rocket from imploding. Workers were reportedly slamming these tanks into mounting racks, creating invisible micro-damage. When those damaged tanks face flight pressures, they explode without warning. One certified COPV inspector claims that when problems were discovered, certain workers were banned from payload sections. That means SpaceX knew there were handling issues, but couldn't control them completely. If this is true, Ship 36 didn't explode because of design flaws. It exploded because of human negligence during manufacturing. Meanwhile, something nobody expected just happened. Honda, yes, the car company, successfully tested a reusable rocket last week. Nobody saw this coming. Honda's rocket is small, about 20 feet tall, but it uses the exact same fuel as Starship, liquid methane and oxygen. More importantly, it worked. It launched, reached 900 feet, and landed perfectly on 4 deployable legs. The landing was almost dead center. That's genuinely impressive for any first attempt, let alone from a car company with zero rocket experience. Honda started this program in 2021 while SpaceX was celebrating early successes. Now, while SpaceX faces crisis after crisis, Honda quietly proves that reusable rockets aren't impossible. Could a car company actually challenge SpaceX? The timeline suggests yes. Honda plans suborbital flights by 2029. That's exactly when SpaceX promised routine Mars missions. The competition is heating up at the worst possible time for SpaceX. Here's the technical nightmare that's killing Starship Block 2. When engineers design rockets, they calculate thrust-to-weight ratio. Too little thrust, you can't reach orbit. Too much weight, same problem. SpaceX engineers massively overestimated how much thrust the Raptor engines could reliably produce. They built Starship assuming engines would perform better than they actually do. Now they're trapped in an impossible situation. They can't make engines more powerful without them exploding. They can't make the rocket heavier or it won't reach orbit. They're stuck with a vehicle that's simultaneously too fragile and too weak. Every flight becomes a desperate balancing act between structural failure and mission failure. That's why we keep seeing these devastating losses. But here's what makes this even more embarrassing. On January 16th, Blue Origin's New Glenn did something Starship has never accomplished. It reached stable orbit and deployed a payload on its very first flight. Same concept as Starship, same fuel type, same reusability goals. But New Glenn worked immediately while Starship has failed 9 consecutive times. Yet SpaceX still won the Department of Defense contract worth $5.9 billion. Blue Origin only got $2.4 billion. Why would the military pay more for a rocket that doesn't work? The answer reveals what SpaceX is really building. SpaceX isn't just fixing Starship Block 2, they're abandoning it entirely. Block 3 represents a complete redesign, and the specifications are staggering. Height increases to 142 meters. That's like adding a 15-story building to an already massive rocket. Larger fuel tanks mean longer burns, higher orbits, and the payload capacity Starship was always supposed to have. But the real breakthrough is Raptor 3 engines. They're 7% lighter, 21% more powerful, and use advanced cooling that eliminates external heat shields. Most importantly, they can actually produce their rated thrust without destroying themselves. The cooling system is so effective that hot plasma burns away fuel leaks before they become problems. No more engine failures from tiny cracks or loose connections. With 100 tons to orbit capacity, one Starship Block 3 launch could deploy what currently takes 5 Falcon 9 missions. For Starlink deployment alone, this changes everything. Here's why SpaceX can afford to keep exploding rockets. Starlink generates nearly $700 million in revenue every month. That's $8.4 billion per year from existing satellites. With 7,600 active satellites serving 5 million customers, Starlink is already profitable enough to fund Starship development indefinitely. Each Block 3 launch could deploy enough satellites to serve thousands of new customers. More customers, more revenue, more funding for bigger rockets. This isn't just about reaching Mars anymore. It's about building the most profitable satellite network in history, while developing the most powerful rocket ever built. But there's a darker timeline crisis SpaceX isn't discussing. NASA's Artemis program depends on Starship working. The lunar lander contract, the Mars missions, the entire future of American space exploration, it all requires Starship to function reliably. Every failed flight pushes these timelines further back. Every explosion damages confidence from partners who've invested billions in SpaceX's promises. If Block 2 truly has fundamental design flaws, then years of development were essentially wasted. Block 3 becomes not just an upgrade, but a desperate attempt to salvage the entire program. Can SpaceX transition to Block 3 fast enough to meet their commitments? Or will continued failures force them to admit that Starship, as originally conceived, simply doesn't work? This brings us back to Ship 37 and the impossible decision. Skip the static fire test, and they risk another catastrophic failure that could shut down the program entirely. Wait for massive repairs, and they lose months of critical development time. But there's a third option nobody's discussing. What if SpaceX uses Flight 10 as a deliberate test to failure? Launch Ship 37, knowing it might explode, but gathering data that proves Block 2's limitations once and for all. That data could justify the massive investment needed for Block 3, while providing cover for abandoning the current design. It's a $100 million test flight that could save the entire program. The question is, does SpaceX have the courage to essentially sacrifice Ship 37 for the greater good? The clock is ticking. The space industry is watching. And SpaceX's next move could determine whether they remain the leader in space exploration or become a cautionary tale about the dangers of moving too fast. So here we are. SpaceX stands at the ultimate crossroads. Ship 37 sits ready, waiting for a decision that could make or break the entire Starship program. Skip the safety tests and risk everything, or play it safe and watch competitors catch up. The space race isn't slowing down. Honda just proved that innovation can come from anywhere. Blue Origin showed that getting it right the first time is possible. But SpaceX has always thrived on impossible odds. They've turned failures into breakthroughs before. The question is, can they do it again? What do you think? Should SpaceX roll the dice with Ship 37 or take the safer path to Block 3? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this space drama, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, this story is just getting started. The next few months will determine who really owns the future of space, and we'll be here to break it all down for you. See you in the next one, space fans. Elon Musk just admitted what destroyed Starship's Mars mission: a single wrong part. Ship 36 exploded with such force that steel chunks flew into the Rio Grande River. The insider truth? SpaceX installed a lower-rated pressure vessel instead of the correct one. One paperwork error, one catastrophic failure. Mars Chuga 100 Yugasex? Forget it. The Massey site looks like a war zone. Cleanup takes 6 to 8 weeks minimum. But here's the real question. How does the world's most advanced rocket company make such a basic mistake? The answer will shock you. Let's dive right in. The investigation that changed everything. Our exclusive sources inside SpaceX just revealed something that should terrify anyone who cares about space exploration. The explosion wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was completely preventable. Here's what happened in those final seconds before Ship 36 became a fireball. The static fire test was proceeding normally. Engines weren't even firing yet. Then, without warning, the composite overwrapped pressure vessel failed catastrophically. But why would a pressure vessel, designed to handle extreme forces, suddenly give up? The answer lies in a shocking discovery that SpaceX engineers are still grappling with. The paperwork showed that technicians had scanned and logged the correct COPV as installed. Every box was checked. Every protocol followed. But the actual hardware told a different story. The fatal mix-up, think of a COPV like the heart of Starship's life support system. It's a carbon fiber tank wrapped around a metal liner, designed to store gases at incredibly high pressures. These aren't off-the-shelf parts. Each one is engineered for specific pressure ratings, specific applications, specific missions to Mars. Now here's where it gets absolutely terrifying. Our source suggests that while the documentation showed the correct high-pressure COPV was installed, a lower-rated version may have actually been used instead. Picture building a dam designed to hold back a massive reservoir, but someone accidentally uses concrete rated for a small pond. What happens when the real pressure hits? The math is brutal. If Ship 36 was loaded with a COPV rated for 300 psi when it needed one rated for 500 psi, failure was inevitable. The question isn't if it would explode, it's when. And that when happened to be during one of the most critical tests in Starship's development. But here's what's keeping SpaceX engineers awake at night. How does this kind of mix-up happen at the world's most advanced rocket company? The process that failed SpaceX has built its reputation on precision. Every bolt, every wire, Every component is tracked from manufacturing to installation. Their quality control systems are legendary. So how did a wrong part make it through multiple checkpoints? The implications are staggering. If this was indeed a process failure, not a design flaw, it means the same mistake could happen again. Tomorrow, next week, on the next Mars mission. Our source painted a picture of the investigation that's both thorough and terrifying. Teams are going through every step of Ship 36's assembly, every scan, every signature, every moment that COPV changed hands. Because if they can't figure out how this happened, Mars isn't just delayed, it's in serious jeopardy. The explosion that defied physics. The force